Did you know that Miyamoto Musashi, despite being a master swordsman, believed the true battle was won in the mind before it was ever fought with a sword? His tactical approach to conflict was about more than just strategy. It was about mental clarity, preparation, and understanding the deeper nature of the challenge ahead. In this video, we're diving into Musashi's principles for facing conflict, and how you can use them to handle any disagreement, business obstacle, or personal challenge with the calm and precision of a seasoned warrior. Stay with me till the end, because the insights we explore could change how you face conflict forever, giving you the mindset and tools to not just survive, but thrive in any situation. Let's get into it. Number 1. Stay calm and observe. Let's dive into this concept of staying calm and observing, inspired by the legendary samurai, Miyamoto Musashi. It sounds pretty simple, right? But in the heat of a conflict, whether you're facing it in a business setting, a personal argument, or even an internal struggle, staying calm isn't just about keeping your emotions in check, it's a strategic decision. Think of the mind as a vast ocean. When a storm hits, everything gets choppy and chaotic. The waves toss you around, the winds are howling, and you can barely see what's in front of you. Now, imagine trying to make decisions in the middle of that storm. You're reacting, not thinking. But Musashi? He would say, don't get caught in the storm. Instead, he teaches us to find the stillness within the chaos. When you're in a conflict, there's often a rush to act. You might want to defend yourself, retaliate, or rush in with a counterattack. This reactionary approach is instinctual, sure, but it's also a trap. Musashi knew that to truly be effective in combat, and in life, you need to first observe. But what does that really mean? It's more than just waiting for the other person to make a move. It's about stepping back and taking in the full picture, not just the immediate emotions that cloud your vision. Here's the tricky part. It's easy to get caught up in the moment. Someone says something hurtful, and immediately your blood starts to boil. You feel an overwhelming urge to respond in kind, to fight back, to prove your point. But Musashi, in his wisdom, would tell you to pause. Just for a moment. Don't react. Look deeper. What's really happening here? What is this person trying to communicate, beyond their words? What's the situation that led to this conflict? What might you be missing by simply reacting on impulse? This level of awareness, this ability to stay calm, isn't just about not saying anything. It's about gathering information. You can't make a calculated move if you're only reacting to the surface level of things. You need to understand the underlying currents, and that requires observation. Musashi talks about understanding your opponent's movements, their rhythm, the way they think, even before you engage. And it's not just about the other person, it's also about understanding yourself. What are your emotions telling you in this moment? Are you afraid? Angry? Offended? Once you recognize those emotions, you can control them, rather than letting them control you. The beauty of this strategy lies in the space it creates. When you don't immediately jump into action, you give yourself time. Time to think. Time to strategize. Time to decide what your next move should be, not out of impulse, but out of clarity. Musashi wasn't in a rush. His famous book, The Book of Five Rings, is essentially a guide to mastering both combat and life by slowing down. He understood that the most powerful move is often the one you don't make at all, at least not right away. Now, let's talk about the observation part. Staying calm is essential, but you also need to pay attention. It's easy to miss subtle details when your mind is racing, when you're itching to defend your pride or get your point across. So what should you be looking for when you observe? First, focus on the rhythm of the interaction. Are there pauses where the other person is waiting for you to react? Do they seem uncertain, or are they going in full force? These clues can help you assess the situation more accurately. Musashi, in his duels, would often notice when his opponent was getting tired or when their confidence was waning. He didn't just wait for them to make a move, he watched for signs that would give him an edge. The second thing to observe is the environment. Conflicts are rarely just about the people involved, there are always external factors. What's the tone of the conversation? What's the energy in the room? How are the stakes changing as the situation develops? Being able to read these things gives you a better understanding of what's at play. In the end, the idea of staying calm and observing isn't about being passive. It's not about letting others walk all over you or avoiding confrontation altogether. It's about choosing the best moment to act and knowing when to hold back. Musashi would say, when you do not understand something, observe it. It's only in that stillness that you'll truly grasp what's going on, and that's when you'll be able to strike with precision and clarity. So next time you're faced with conflict, take a breath. Step back, observe, and trust in the process. When you're calm, you can see things for what they really are, and that's the first step to winning, no matter what kind of battle you're facing. Number 2, control your emotions. When it comes to conflict, one of the toughest challenges we face is keeping our emotions in check. If you let your emotions run wild, they can cloud your judgment and lead to actions you'll regret. Musashi, the legendary sword fighter, understood this well. He knew that the key to winning any battle, whether on the field or in life, wasn't just skill with a weapon or strategy, it was mastering the mind. And at the heart of that mastery was emotional control. Picture this, you're in the heat of the moment, adrenaline pumping, your heart racing. The temptation to react impulsively is strong. Maybe you feel anger bubbling up or frustration weighing you down. It's easy to fall into that trap of responding without thinking. But Musashi would say that this is exactly the moment when you need to take a step back and breathe. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending they're not there. It means acknowledging them and deciding not to let them dictate your next move. Musashi emphasized the importance of maintaining clarity of thought, even when chaos surrounds you. That clarity comes from controlling your emotions, not allowing them to cloud your mind. Imagine trying to make a crucial decision when you're blinded by anger. You'll miss key details, misread situations, and perhaps take actions that escalate the conflict instead of resolving it. But when your emotions are under control, you can see things more clearly. You're able to think strategically, weigh your options, and choose the response that will get you closer to your goal. One of the hardest parts of emotional control is recognizing when your emotions are starting to take over. It's easy to say, "I'll stay calm," but much harder to spot when your temper is rising or when frustration is slowly creeping in. Musashi's teachings suggest being hyper-aware of your mental state, almost like a constant self-check. Instead of waiting until you're already emotionally charged, make it a habit to check in with yourself regularly. Are you feeling tense? Agitated? Is your mind racing with thoughts of revenge or frustration? Catching those early signs gives you the chance to course correct before things get out of hand. But how do you actually control your emotions when you feel them building? Musashi's answer was simple: don't act immediately. One of the most powerful things you can do in any conflict is give yourself some space before responding. It doesn't have to be long, just a moment to breathe and reset your mind. This is where emotional control starts. By creating that small gap, you're allowing yourself time to break the emotional reaction cycle. You're not giving into the immediate urge to shout, retaliate, or do something you'll regret. Instead, you're stepping outside of the emotion and observing it from a distance, like a spectator instead of a participant. This pause doesn't just calm your emotions, it gives you the power to decide how to respond rather than react. It's easy to think that showing emotions, like anger or frustration, is a sign of strength. But Musashi would argue that true strength lies in the ability to remain calm, no matter how intense the situation gets. Emotional outbursts might feel satisfying in the moment, but they rarely lead to good outcomes. Staying composed allows you to remain in control of the situation and the narrative, rather than letting your emotions take the lead. In times of conflict, emotions are like storms. They can come on suddenly, shaking everything in their path. But if you can learn to weather the storm without letting it tear you apart, you're left standing firm when others may falter. Musashi knew this better than anyone, and he understood that the person who can maintain control of their emotions is often the one who walks away victorious. So, the next time you find yourself in a conflict, remember Musashi's advice. Take a breath, check your emotions, and give yourself the gift of time. It's not about suppressing how you feel, it's about choosing how to respond. When you master your emotions, you can face any conflict with the calm of a seasoned warrior. Number 3. Adapt to the situation. When it comes to conflict, one of the key lessons from Musashi's teachings is to adapt to whatever the situation throws at you. It's not about sticking to a rigid plan or trying to force things to go your way. Instead, it's about having the flexibility to shift, pivot, and adjust based on the circumstances around you. Think of it like navigating through a storm. You can't control the wind or the waves, but you can adjust your sails. This is a mindset that Musashi truly embodied, and it's something that can make a world of difference in how you handle conflict. Musashi understood that life, like combat, is dynamic. You can't predict what will happen next, and that's where the ability to adapt becomes invaluable. In the midst of a challenge, things won't always go according to plan. One moment, you might feel on top of things, and the next, you might feel like everything is slipping through your fingers. This is where your adaptability comes into play. Instead of trying to force your will on the situation, you flow with it, responding in ways that fit what's happening in the moment. It's a bit like dancing with the conflict rather than battling it head-on. The key is to recognize the situation for what it is, not for what you wish it could be. Now, adapting doesn't mean giving up your values or your integrity. It doesn't mean bending over backward just to please others or avoid conflict altogether. Instead, it's about understanding that sometimes, the approach you thought would work might not be the best one for the moment. Maybe it's a slight change in strategy, a shift in your mindset, or even just altering how you communicate. What Musashi was a master of was reading the situation, taking a step back when necessary, and then reacting in a way that felt natural given the circumstances. It's this calm and deliberate response, rather than rash or panicked behavior, that makes all the difference. One of the most important aspects of adapting is recognizing when things are no longer in your control. There are moments when the best thing you can do is let go of the desire to win and instead focus on keeping your balance. If you constantly try to fight against the current, you'll exhaust yourself. Musashi understood the power of patience, of stepping back and taking time to assess before charging ahead. Adaptability often requires you to take a moment, gather your thoughts, and then choose a course of action that feels right based on your understanding of the situation. It's about being comfortable with uncertainty and knowing that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is wait for the right opening. Another layer of adaptation is being prepared for unpredictability. Conflicts rarely unfold exactly how you envision them, and that's why being rigid can be your downfall. Musashi didn't go into battles with just one plan. He had a variety of ways to approach a situation depending on how things played out. That's the kind of mental agility you want to cultivate. You need to be ready for anything, but also open to the possibility that things may not go as you thought. This ability to roll with the punches allows you to handle conflict without losing your cool or your composure. In moments of conflict, being adaptable isn't about being passive or weak. In fact, it takes a lot of strength and self-awareness to step back, assess the situation, and shift your approach. It's the mark of someone who's not just reacting emotionally, but responding with purpose and control. When you can do that, you make yourself much more difficult to be thrown off balance, and you also set yourself up for a greater chance of success in resolving the conflict. The bottom line? Adaptability is the cornerstone of Musashi's tactical genius. It's the ability to read the room, sense the flow of events, and respond in a way that's both calm and effective. By embracing this fluid mindset, you can face any conflict with confidence, knowing that you have the mental tools to navigate whatever comes your way. It's not about being the strongest or the loudest, but about being the one who can adjust and keep moving forward no matter what. Number 4, strike decisively and with purpose. Alright, let's dive into this idea of striking decisively and with purpose, something Musashi nailed in his own way of thinking. Now, when you hear strike, it might make you think of swinging a sword or launching an attack. But really, in the context of handling conflict, a strike isn't just physical, it's about making a move, taking action, and doing so with clarity and intent. Musashi wasn't just a warrior who swung his sword recklessly. No, he had a plan, a purpose behind every action. Imagine being in a heated situation, whether it's a disagreement or a high-stakes decision you need to make. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like you're standing in the middle of a storm of emotions and choices. It's tempting to swing at everything, hoping something lands and makes a difference. But that's not the way to handle things, according to Musashi. He would say, don't just swing for the sake of swinging. Every action, every move, should have a reason behind it. There's no room for hesitation when it's time to act. Musashi was all about cutting through the noise and getting to the point. His strikes were not just physical, they were mental, calculated, and purposeful. Now, let's break this down. To strike decisively, you need to know exactly what you want to achieve. It's like setting an intention before you make a move. Whether it's winning the argument, getting what you need in a negotiation, or simply resolving the issue at hand, your actions need to align with that goal. Think of it as aiming with your sword. If you don't know where you're aiming, you might miss the mark completely. But if your aim is sharp and clear, your strike will have impact. The real beauty in Musashi's approach comes when you think about the timing of the strike. It's not about rushing in or making a rash decision. It's about knowing when to act, when to make that move, and when to trust your instincts. Musashi often said that in battle, the key was understanding the right moment to strike. And that timing comes from observation, patience, and clarity, just like we talked about earlier. By waiting for the perfect moment, your strike becomes that much more powerful because it's rooted in understanding the situation and the person you're dealing with. When you strike, it has to be with purpose. This doesn't mean you need to be dramatic or over the top, it just means your actions should carry weight. Whether it's a verbal point you make or a decision you push forward, it has to be something that moves the needle toward your goal. If you hesitate or strike out of anger, your actions will lack the same power. Imagine someone making a bold move, but their words are tangled or their body language doesn't match their intentions. That's ineffective. It's like striking with half a swing, not committed, not fully invested in the outcome. Another thing Musashi would stress is that a decisive strike doesn't mean it's the end of the battle. It's just the beginning. One well-thought-out move can change the momentum of a situation, but you can't stop there. Musashi never let himself get complacent after a successful strike. He was always thinking ahead, always considering the next step. This is crucial. In conflict, one action might be the catalyst, but there's always more to be done. Your strike opens the door, but you have to walk through it, keeping your focus and purpose sharp. It's easy to get caught up in the desire for instant results, right? We want things resolved now, and we want to be in control. But Musashi teaches us patience. He would say, don't be in a hurry to land a blow. Make sure that every step, every move you make is carefully considered. There's a certain elegance in being deliberate, in taking that moment to breathe and then moving with full intent. Musashi's strikes were not only decisive, they were calm and precise. It's like a sculptor chiseling away at a block of marble. Each strike counts, but it's all part of creating something bigger. Lastly, striking decisively means embracing the consequences. Musashi knew that every action had its aftermath. Whether that was a victory or a loss, he accepted it, learned from it, and adjusted. In conflict, your actions might not always go as planned, and that's fine. What matters is that you own your decisions, and you're ready to adjust and move forward. So when you face conflict, remember Musashi's wisdom: don't just act, strike decisively and with purpose. Be clear about what you want, act when the time is right, and do so with the full weight of your intention behind it. A well-executed move might be all it takes to shift the balance and guide the situation toward your desired outcome. Number 5. Never show weakness. When it comes to conflict, one of the most powerful lessons you can learn from Musashi is this: never show weakness. On the surface, that might sound like a no-brainer. Of course, we don't want to appear weak. But there's more to it than just putting on a tough face. Musashi's teachings go deeper, urging us to maintain an unshakable presence even when the pressure's on, and the stakes are high. The first thing to understand is that showing weakness isn't just about physical vulnerability, it's about mental and emotional exposure. Musashi wasn't talking about being invulnerable or untouchable in the human sense. He was referring to how others perceive your strength, your resolve, and your ability to hold your ground. When you show weakness in conflict, even if it's just in a subtle shift of posture or a faltering of your words, it gives the other person something to latch onto. And once they sense that weakness, they will exploit it. That's how conflicts get escalated or even turned against you. It's not about faking confidence either. Faking it only works for so long, and eventually, people will catch on. Musashi was all about authenticity in the face of adversity. He understood that true strength comes from being resolute in your beliefs, being unwavering in your stance, and staying grounded, no matter the situation. It's like holding a firm grip on a sword. It's not about being overly tense or rigid, but about staying steady and focused. Imagine this: when you're in the middle of a conflict, there's a temptation to let your guard down, to show a crack in your armor. Maybe you're feeling uncertain or overwhelmed, and it's easy to slip into a defensive posture or, worse, apologize for standing your ground. But Musashi's approach is different. His strategy wasn't just to win the fight physically, it was about keeping your opponent off balance by not giving them any foothold to grab onto. If you project an air of certainty, even when you're internally questioning things, it forces the other party to second-guess themselves. They won't know what you're thinking or where your limits are, and that confusion works in your favor. Now, I'm not saying that you should become a robot, devoid of emotion or humanity. Far from it. There's a fine line between showing strength and becoming cold or detached. Musashi wasn't advocating for turning into some kind of emotionless machine. What he meant by never showing weakness was about not allowing others to see your vulnerabilities, not letting them use your insecurities against you. It's about holding onto your integrity, no matter how tempting it might be to back down or compromise. One of the hardest parts of this is staying composed when emotions are running high. The temptation to lash out, to throw in a defensive remark, or to react with frustration is real. But Musashi's point is clear: when you show that kind of emotional weakness, you've already lost. The moment you let your emotions control you, you give the other side an advantage. Whether it's through a raised voice, a change in body language, or a slip of the tongue, any sign of weakness invites a counterattack. This doesn't mean you can't feel what you're feeling. It means you have to master your responses and show restraint in the heat of the moment. Remember, Musashi didn't just win fights on the battlefield with his sword skills, he mastered the psychological game. He understood that if your opponent senses fear, doubt, or insecurity, they will strike at that point. But if you appear calm, unwavering, and steadfast, they're less likely to push you further. They might question whether it's worth continuing the conflict, or they might hesitate before attacking again. The longer you hold that position of strength, the more likely the other side will start second-guessing their approach. Of course, this doesn't mean you should go around acting like you're invincible. Musashi's strength wasn't in pretending he was perfect, it was in acknowledging his own limitations while never letting others see them. He knew that true strength wasn't about being unbeatable, it was about being adaptable, resilient, and always maintaining control over how you present yourself. If you can learn to stay strong in the face of any conflict, never letting weakness seep through, you'll find that the power lies with you, not with the circumstances or the people challenging you. So, next time you find yourself in the middle of a conflict, remember Musashi's wisdom: keep your stance steady, keep your emotions in check, and never give anyone the chance to see your cracks. When you do this, you take the power back. You stay in control, and you walk away victorious, not just in the conflict, but in the battle of perception. Number 6. Learn from every battle. When you're in the middle of a conflict, it's easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment. Emotions run high, and your focus is often on winning or just getting through it. But Musashi, the legendary samurai, had a different perspective. He knew that every battle, whether won or lost, held a lesson. It wasn't just about the outcome, it was about what you could learn from the experience. This mindset is key when facing any kind of conflict. If you can approach every challenge with the goal of learning from it, you'll come out of it better prepared for the next one. Think about it. Each conflict you face, big or small, is like a mirror reflecting your strengths and weaknesses. If you're willing to look honestly, you'll spot areas where you could improve. Maybe you reacted too quickly, or maybe you didn't listen as closely as you should have. Musashi didn't walk away from a battle without taking a moment to reflect on what worked and what didn't. He understood that if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're doomed to repeat them. So, why not treat each challenge like a learning opportunity? The beauty of this approach is that you don't need to win a conflict to gain something valuable from it. In fact, sometimes the most powerful lessons come from situations that don't go as planned. When you find yourself in a tense moment or a losing position, instead of sulking or blaming others, shift your focus inward. Ask yourself questions. Did I misread the situation? Was my timing off? Could I have communicated better? By reflecting on your actions, you open the door to growth. The next time a similar conflict arises, you'll be more equipped to handle it. Learning from every battle isn't just about analyzing what went wrong, though. It's also about noticing what went right. Musashi wasn't only critical of his own actions, he took the time to recognize what worked well, too. The moments where your communication was clear, where you stayed calm, or where you adjusted to the situation fluidly, those are the moments worth celebrating. By paying attention to these small victories, you reinforce the positive behaviors you want to carry forward. Musashi's genius was in his ability to find the balance, celebrating successes and learning from missteps equally. But here's the catch: learning doesn't mean overthinking. It's not about ruminating endlessly on what happened, trying to dissect every little detail until you're paralyzed by indecision. Musashi was about efficiency, and the same goes for learning from conflict. The process should be quick and actionable. Reflect, identify a lesson, and move on. If you dwell too much on one conflict, you risk losing momentum and getting stuck in the past. Instead, make the learning part of your growth. It's not a roadblock, it's a stepping stone. Another part of learning from every battle is recognizing patterns. Over time, you'll start to see recurring themes in the conflicts you face. Maybe you tend to get triggered by certain things, or maybe you notice you respond in a particular way when under pressure. Musashi was keen on understanding patterns, not just in his enemies, but in himself. When you start to identify these patterns in your own behavior, you give yourself the chance to make proactive changes. You can prepare for the next encounter by adjusting your mindset, improving your reactions, or shifting how you approach the situation altogether. And let's not forget about the value of humility. Musashi was a master of the sword, but he never stopped learning. Even after winning countless duels, he continued refining his skills and deepening his understanding. That's the kind of attitude that will serve you well in conflict. It's easy to think you know it all, especially when you've been through a few battles, but the moment you stop learning is the moment you start stagnating. Each new challenge is an opportunity to refine your skills, sharpen your mindset, and grow as a person. So, the next time you face a conflict, don't just focus on the immediate result. Look beyond the surface and ask yourself what you can learn. Take the time to reflect, identify your strengths and weaknesses, and apply those lessons to the future. Like Musashi, let each battle be a stepping stone to becoming the best version of yourself, no matter the outcome. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be willing to learn. And that's where the real power lies. Number 7, be prepared for any outcome. Alright, let's talk about the idea of being prepared for any outcome, a core part of Musashi's tactical approach. Now, this might seem like a no-brainer, right? Of course, you need to prepare. But it's not just about being ready in a generic, I have a plan kind of way. Musashi wasn't just talking about the obvious stuff. He was about understanding the full scope of the situation, every possible outcome, every twist, turn, and detour that might come your way. When he stepped onto the battlefield, he wasn't just thinking about winning. He was preparing for all possibilities, and that's the mindset we need to adopt when facing conflict. Think about it, how often do we approach a difficult situation, whether it's a conversation or a business deal, thinking, this is how it's going to go, and it has to go my way. We can get so locked into a particular outcome that we forget to prepare for what might actually happen. Musashi would have probably raised an eyebrow at that. He'd tell you, don't get stuck on a single outcome, because life rarely plays out exactly how you expect. It's like setting off on a journey, only to realize you've never thought about the terrain ahead or the weather that might change in an instant. Without flexibility, you're setting yourself up for failure. Being prepared for any outcome doesn't mean you're just expecting the worst. It means you're not fooling yourself into thinking there's only one right way for things to go. You prepare for the full spectrum, whether that's success, failure, or something in between. When Musashi was preparing for a duel, he didn't just focus on how to strike his opponent. He also considered what would happen if the opponent was stronger than he thought, or if something unexpected threw off his rhythm. The goal was to create an internal map, one that included every potential path, so he could remain adaptable no matter what came his way. So, how does this translate to conflict in our daily lives? First off, it's about acknowledging that you might not always get what you want, and that's okay. In a tough situation, you might not win, you might not change someone's mind, or you might not get the outcome you're hoping for. That's the reality of conflict, it's unpredictable. But the key here is that when you've prepared yourself mentally for multiple outcomes, you're not going to get thrown off when things don't go your way. Let's break this down a bit more. Being prepared means having options. If you're walking into a tough conversation, think ahead. What if the person you're dealing with becomes defensive? What if they ignore your points entirely? What if they surprise you with an entirely different angle you hadn't even considered? Musashi wasn't just ready for the obvious. He understood the value of thinking beyond the surface, understanding how your opponent, or the situation, might react in ways that could throw off your initial plans. It's about knowing that the battlefield of any conflict is full of variables, and the more of them you've thought through, the better you can adjust in real time. Preparation also means emotional resilience. Often, in the heat of conflict, emotions run high, and it's easy to get swept up in anger or frustration when things aren't going your way. But if you've mentally prepared for various outcomes, you won't be blindsided by a tough turn. Musashi didn't lose his composure in the middle of battle because he was prepared, not just physically, but mentally. He didn't let a failed strike or an unexpected move by his opponent throw him off balance. In our own conflicts, this mental fortitude allows us to stay calm, adapt, and keep our focus even when things take a turn for the worse. Here's where the concept of flexibility comes in. Preparation doesn't mean having a rigid, "this is the only way to do this" mindset. It's the opposite. It's about having a plan, but knowing that plan can shift. Musashi understood that the best warriors were the ones who could adjust their approach on the fly, changing tactics when something unexpected came up. So, when you prepare for any outcome, you're not preparing for a singular vision of success, you're preparing to pivot, change direction, and shift your tactics when necessary. At the same time, being prepared for the unexpected gives you confidence. It's like having a safety net, knowing that no matter what comes your way, you've got the mental tools to handle it. When you know that every outcome is a possibility, you stop clinging so tightly to one idea of how things should be. You're open, adaptable, and ready to learn from whatever happens. So, when facing conflict, think like Musashi. Don't just prepare for the victory. Prepare for the losses, the setbacks, the unexpected moments of tension. When you approach things this way, you can stay calm and decisive, no matter what the outcome ends up being. You won't be crushed by failure, and you won't get complacent with success. Instead, you'll have the ability to move forward with clarity, purpose, and the ability to turn any outcome into a stepping stone for the next phase of your journey. Number 8. Master multiple strategies. When it comes to conflict, having one strategy in your back pocket just isn't enough. Musashi, the master of the sword, knew this better than anyone. He didn't just rely on a single approach, he had an entire arsenal of tactics at his disposal, each tailored for different situations. And that's the first lesson he teaches us: master multiple strategies. Think about it, if you always approach a problem with the same mindset, you'll end up stuck in a loop, responding in the same predictable ways. But life isn't one size fits all. Every conflict, every challenge, presents unique circumstances that require flexibility, adaptability, and, above all, a variety of strategies to deal with it. Musashi understood this, which is why he never put all his eggs in one basket. He knew that a good fighter, or, in this case, a person facing any type of conflict, needs to be ready for anything. Imagine you're in a tough spot, maybe someone's challenging you or the pressure's building up. If your only strategy is to push back with force, you're limiting yourself. What if that doesn't work? What if your opponent is stronger, or they're using tactics that can counter your direct approach? Musashi would tell you that you need to have several strategies at the ready. The key is not to lock yourself into one method, but to understand the right time to shift gears. Sometimes, the best move isn't the most obvious one. So, what does it mean to master multiple strategies? It's about training yourself to think in layers, to approach a situation from different angles. One moment, you might need to take a step back, and the next, you could be launching forward with full force. The trick is knowing when to make those shifts. If your initial approach doesn't seem to be working, don't just double down on it, pivot. Go for something unexpected. That unpredictability is what keeps your opponent, or anyone challenging you, on their toes. And that unpredictability? It gives you a significant advantage. But mastering multiple strategies doesn't mean being a jack of all trades, master of none. It's about refining your skills so that each strategy feels like second nature. Musashi didn't just dabble in different techniques, he honed them until they became instinctive. He could switch from one method to another seamlessly, without hesitation. This kind of versatility is what makes someone truly dangerous in a conflict, whether they're facing a rival, an obstacle, or even their own doubts. Another aspect of mastering multiple strategies is understanding the environment you're in. It's one thing to have a bunch of tactics in mind, but if you don't know when and where to apply them, they're useless. A good strategist knows that the battlefield is never the same twice. Your surroundings change, the people you're dealing with change, and so should your response. You can't be rigid. Musashi was a master of situational awareness. He understood the importance of timing, knowing when to push and when to pull back. And to do that, he had to constantly adapt. Mastery isn't just about learning different strategies, it's about knowing which one fits the moment. Let's not forget about the psychological side of things. Having multiple strategies isn't just about physical actions, it's about mental agility too. If you can anticipate what's coming, if you can read the room and understand the dynamics at play, you can shift your approach before anyone else has even realized what's happening. That mental flexibility is what makes the difference between reacting and truly responding. It's about staying ahead of the game, always prepared to switch things up and never getting too attached to one way of thinking. Of course, it's not always easy to think multiple steps ahead, and it's tempting to stick with what you know. But Musashi would tell you that to truly conquer a conflict, you have to think outside of your own comfort zone. Don't get too attached to any one strategy, because no single approach works every time. The world is too dynamic, too unpredictable, to rely on one tactic. By mastering multiple strategies, you position yourself to adapt and win, no matter what challenges come your way. So, take a page from Musashi's book. Equip yourself with a range of tactics, hone them until they become second nature, and stay fluid. The more strategies you master, the more confident you'll be in your ability to face any conflict head-on, and the better you'll be at walking away victorious. Number 9. Use deception and misdirection. In the midst of a conflict, sometimes the best strategy isn't about meeting force with force. Musashi understood this well. Sometimes, the most effective weapon is deception and misdirection. It's a clever tactic, one that's not about tricking people in a malicious way but more about throwing them off balance, creating doubt, and causing them to react based on false assumptions. This approach can be a game changer, especially when things feel tense and you're trying to find a way out of a sticky situation. Imagine, for a second, that you're in the heat of an argument or a challenging conversation. You can feel the tension building, and everything seems to be closing in. Musashi would tell you that instead of facing that pressure head-on, you should consider how to manipulate the flow of the interaction. One of the most powerful aspects of misdirection is that it makes your opponent or the other party question their own position, making them hesitate or even change their course of action without you having to exert more effort. It's like redirecting the flow of water. Rather than trying to stop the current, you guide it somewhere else entirely. So, how does this work in practice? The key is subtlety. Deception doesn't have to be bold or overly obvious. Musashi's approach was about misdirecting attention, making people focus on the wrong thing so that their energy and focus are consumed elsewhere. This doesn't mean lying or creating an illusion that falls apart the moment it's questioned. Instead, it's about introducing uncertainty, shifting the conversation, changing the pace, or even allowing the other person to think they've gained ground when, in reality, you're the one controlling the flow. Think about the power of leaving an opening that's not actually there. Sometimes, you might make a small gesture or a comment that seems like a concession, but in reality, it's a setup for something bigger. It's a way of planting a seed of doubt, making the other person believe that they have the upper hand, even if they don't. The beauty of this tactic is in its restraint. The moment you reveal too much or make your intention clear, the effect is lost. Misdirection relies on creating just enough uncertainty to shift the dynamic without letting it backfire. This strategy isn't just about manipulating the other person's focus, though. It's about controlling the rhythm of the conflict. Musashi was a master at disrupting his opponent's flow, and you can apply the same concept to any type of disagreement or situation. Sometimes, by being unpredictable, whether it's through timing, speech, or body language, you force the other person into a reactionary mode. Instead of them leading the conversation, you become the one who shapes how it plays out. You create a sense of unpredictability, forcing the situation to bend to your will. There's another layer to this, too. Misdirection works best when it's combined with genuine intent and understanding. Musashi didn't just deceive for the sake of it. His misdirection was rooted in a deep knowledge of strategy and an awareness of his surroundings. He wasn't trying to confuse or overwhelm his opponent without a purpose. Every move had a reason behind it. In conflict, you can take the same approach. Use misdirection not to manipulate the other person, but to create space where you can introduce new perspectives, solutions, or ideas that they didn't see coming. It's easy to think that the only way to win a conflict is by forcing your point of view or overpowering the other side. But deception and misdirection flip that notion on its head. They let you operate from a place of quiet control, where your movements and words guide the conversation without the need for force. It's a way of outsmarting the conflict rather than outmuscling it. The trick is to stay calm, stay aware, and use subtle cues to direct the flow of energy. In the end, this tactic isn't about being sneaky or deceitful in the negative sense. It's about strategically guiding a conversation or situation so that you don't have to fight tooth and nail to get your way. You let the other party focus on the wrong thing, letting their own perceptions and assumptions cloud their judgment. It's a way of gaining the upper hand without ever needing to be aggressive or confrontational. Just like Musashi did in his duels, you can master the art of deception and misdirection in conflict. When done correctly, it gives you the ability to control the situation from behind the scenes, allowing you to move with purpose and precision, while the other side remains none the wiser. It's a quiet but powerful way of handling conflict, one that doesn't require you to shout or force your will, but to gently guide the outcome in your favor. Number 10. Maintain an unpredictable rhythm. Let's dive into what it means to maintain an unpredictable rhythm, which might sound a little mysterious at first, but it's actually one of the most powerful tools in Musashi's approach to conflict. Now, when you think about rhythm, you probably picture music, right? Something steady, consistent, that gives the whole piece structure. But here's the twist: Musashi wasn't talking about the kind of rhythm that's easy to follow. He was talking about creating a rhythm that's hard to predict, that keeps your opponent on their toes, and ultimately gives you the upper hand. In any kind of conflict, whether it's a conversation, a negotiation, or a competition, people expect a certain flow. They expect you to behave in a predictable way, to respond in a certain pattern. It's the classic back and forth. You make a point, they respond, you counter, they counter. It becomes a game of who can outwit whom. But Musashi's tactical approach was to break this predictable pattern, to introduce an unpredictable rhythm that throws the other person off balance. If you can maintain this kind of rhythm, you're not just reacting to the situation, you're controlling it. So how do you do this? It's all about being dynamic in your actions, switching up your pace, your tone, and your approach. When you get stuck in a groove, when you become too predictable, that's when you lose your edge. Think about it: if your opponent knows exactly what to expect from you, they'll start building counter strategies. But if you keep changing things up, if you're a step ahead, suddenly they're the ones trying to figure you out. Imagine you're in a conversation or debate. You start with something calm and measured, but then, just when they think they've figured you out, you hit them with something unexpected, something they weren't prepared for. It doesn't have to be aggressive or overly dramatic. It's more about changing the tempo, shifting your tone, your body language, or even the direction of the conversation. If you keep switching between predictable and unpredictable, the person you're dealing with will struggle to find their footing. They'll be forced to react to you, rather than the other way around. It's important to understand that this unpredictability isn't just about throwing random moves. That would be chaos, and chaos doesn't help anyone. It's about being deliberate in your unpredictability, making intentional shifts in your rhythm that force your opponent or the situation to respond to you, rather than the other way around. Musashi's rhythm wasn't about mindlessly changing pace, it was about knowing exactly when to strike, when to wait, and when to change your approach entirely. He was always aware of the situation and would adjust his moves based on the shifts in his opponent's behavior. Another key element of maintaining an unpredictable rhythm is timing. This is where you really get to control the flow of the interaction. You don't always have to be the loudest or the fastest. Sometimes, slowing things down, pulling back, and allowing space for others to act is enough to throw off their rhythm. And then, when they least expect it, you hit them with something fast and sharp. Musashi would often wait for the perfect moment, not rushing to make a move but allowing his opponent to reveal their weaknesses. The same goes for handling conflict. By staying unpredictable in your actions and responses, you keep the situation fluid, leaving little room for others to anticipate your next move. Here's the kicker: when you maintain this unpredictability, you stop being the reactive party. Instead, you create an environment where the conflict or situation evolves based on your actions. You aren't waiting for them to make the next move, you're forcing them to respond to you. You control the pace, and that gives you power. By remaining unpredictable, you disrupt the other person's mental flow, making it much harder for them to stay focused and aligned with their own tactics. But don't mistake unpredictability for chaos. It's not about just doing random things to keep the other person guessing. It's about mastering the art of control within the flow. Sometimes, unpredictability means showing restraint. At other times, it means making a bold move, and then retreating back into silence. The key is to never let your opponent, or the situation, become too comfortable with your rhythm. When you maintain that fluidity, when you always keep them guessing, you become the one who holds the reins. In the end, maintaining an unpredictable rhythm isn't about being erratic or throwing everyone off with surprise attacks. It's about establishing a pattern of behavior that keeps the other person on edge, forcing them to respond to you instead of driving the interaction themselves. Musashi's genius was in his ability to control the flow, to keep the battle unpredictable, and to always stay one step ahead. By learning to change your rhythm, to play with the tempo, you can make sure that you're always in control of how the conflict unfolds, and that's how you win. Thanks for watching. I hope Musashi's tactical approach to conflict has given you valuable insights on how to stay calm, strategic, and in control when faced with challenges. Remember, true strength isn't just about fighting, it's about knowing when to act and how to approach any situation with clarity and purpose. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more lessons on personal growth, discipline, and overcoming obstacles. Keep applying these strategies, and you'll not only face conflict but master it. Until next time, stay focused, stay sharp, and approach life like a true warrior. Take care.